is Miss Hall, and I am so excited to be teaching you a lesson today on how to divide one fraction by another fraction. So before we get started with the lesson, I would like to share my screen with you all. I have a little slideshow to go along with our lesson today. There we go. So if you could just give me a thumbs up if you can see the slideshow. Great. It looks like everybody can see it. Okay, I also want to point out before we get started that I have opened up the chat on Zoom so that you will be able to type a question into the chat that only I will see. So if at any point you have questions about what we're learning in today's lesson, please feel free to put your question in the chat and I will be happy to look at that, review those questions, and try my very best to answer any questions that you have. There are no bad questions, so please, anything you need clarification on, I am here to help. Okay, so I love sloths, so I thought to make this even a little bit more fun. You know, math is already a lot of fun, I think, but to make it even more fun, let's add some sloths into the mix. So this sloth is thinking, can you really divide a fraction by another fraction? And it's a great question. It seems a lot more manageable to think about dividing a whole number by another whole number, right? Dividing 4 by 2, which would give us 2 groups of 2, seems a lot more clear than dividing 5/8 by 7/9, right? What? How do we do that? So we are going to explore that together today. Okay, and to explore this, I thought it might be helpful to put it in the context of a real world example. Now, luckily, the state standards for Georgia math education, that's where I'm from, gives us a question that we can explore as we learn about dividing fractions by fractions. And here is that question. How many 3/4 cup servings are in 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? Simple enough, right? Or maybe not. No, not simple enough at first glance. We really have to break this one down, I think. The sloth is saying, wait, what? And that's what I thought when I first saw this question. I thought, how is that supposed to be helpful? But the more I really pursued this question and did some hands-on experimenting to try to visualize how this would really all work out, the more I realized this question can be answered and it can make sense. So let's first do some review before we really dig into this question and dig into today's objective or goal of dividing fractions by fractions. So first of all, we know about the fundamentals of division, right? We know that division, we start with one number and we try to divide that number into equal groups, a certain number of equal groups. So for example, we might try to divide the number 12 into 2 equal groups. So these 2 sloths have 12 apples that they are trying to share equally. They're trying to split the 12 apples up into 2 equal groups so that they'll each end up with the same number of apples. And ding, 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 they were able to do it by splitting the 12 apples into 2 equal groups of 6. So 12 divided into 2 equal groups gives us 6 per group. All right, now multiplying fractions is something else that we're going to need to use a little bit later on today. And this is something that we have studied recently, so it's probably still pretty fresh in our minds. But just to make sure, when we multiply fractions, we multiply the numerators by one another. So the numerator in our first fraction is 3, numerator being the number on the top of the fraction. And the numerator in the second fraction is 2. So 3 times 2, we know that's 6. So 6 is the numerator of our answer. Let's do the same with the denominators. So we're going to multiply 4, the denominator of the first fraction, by 5, the denominator of the second fraction, and this gives us 20. The last step is to simplify. What do we mean by simplifying a fraction? Probably all of you remember this. We're just breaking it down into its smallest part. So we're thinking about what number can we divide, or what's the biggest number that we can divide both of these numbers by in order to simplify the fraction down. Now we know that these are both even numbers, right? 6 and 20. So certainly they can both be divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 would be 3. And 20 divided by 2 would be 10. So we could simplify this fraction down to 3/10. Okay, now let's return to that original question. How many 3/4 cup servings are in 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? The first thing that I like to ask myself with these types of word problems is, what are we starting with? Are we starting with the 3/4 cup servings, or are we starting with 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? What do you think? I think we're starting with 2/3 of a cup of yogurt. So I'm going to make that the first fraction in my problem. Now, we're taking that 2/3 cup of yogurt and we're dividing it into 3/4 cup servings. And then we're trying to find the answer here. So this is really the meat of today's lesson. But here's the thing, I don't really know exactly how we would do this, right? If we left it in this form, how are we supposed to divide a fraction by another fraction? Well, you actually have to convert the fraction division problem into a fraction multiplication problem. So you can breathe a sigh of relief because this is something we've already learned and something you'll already be familiar with once we get it into its multiplication format. Okay, so to set up or to convert a fraction division problem into a fraction multiplication problem, we are going to need to understand how to find the reciprocal of a fraction. So the reciprocal is when we switch around the numerator and the denominator. I should have done my motions this way. So the numerator is going to travel to the bottom of the fraction, and the denominator is going to travel to the top of the fraction. So we now have 2/5 is our starting fraction. The reciprocal is 5/2. Okay, so let's do this. So here's how we use that information about reciprocal when converting a fraction division problem into its fraction multiplication problem. So what we're going to do is say 2/3, we're going to keep the first fraction exactly the same. 2/3, change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and then find the reciprocal of the second fraction. 4/3, so 2/3 times 4/3, right? Because the denominator moved up to the numerator and the numerator moved down to the denominator. Equals, and now we're just going to solve this like we would any other fraction multiplication problem. So the numerator times the numerator, 2 times 4 is 8. So 8 will be the numerator of our answer. And then let's multiply the denominators. 3 times 3 equals, skip count, 3, 6, 9, 9. So 8/9 is our answer. So we now know that 2/3 divided by 3/4 equals 8/9. So we could move this answer right up to here as well. Okay, so before we try some more problems, some more fraction division problems, I would like to show you what I did hands-on to really understand this question, this dilemma with the yogurt. Because we have the answer, right? We know that the answer to this question is 8/9, but that didn't necessarily mean very much to me just going through those steps, right? Sometimes I think it's great in math to understand the steps that you can do just to sort of quickly find the answer to a problem. But it's also really wonderful when that can be balanced with really understanding what it means and what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen for the moment. Perfect. And we are going to pretend like we're serving some yogurt. We're going to break this down. So we know that we started with 2/3 of a cup of yogurt. So here is a 2/3 measuring cup. And I don't have yogurt on hand, so we're just going to use some water. I have some water in this little pitcher. So we are going to start by filling up the 2/3 cup. Again, pretending this is yogurt until it's full. Okay, it is full. You can probably see the water. Whoop, I have a bowl underneath to catch anything that falls out. You can probably see the water all the way to the top. There you go. And I also have for us a 3/4 measuring cup. So we are going to pour the 2/3 cup of water into the 3/4 cup. There we go. It almost all made it in there, so that's good news. And let's see, how full is it exactly? Well, you can tell it's actually not filled up all the way to the top, but it is very close. Now, does anybody remember the answer we found for that question? It was 8/9. So does this look like about 8/9 of a 3/4 cup? I think so too. I think that if you were to split this up, it would be about 8/9 of this 3/4 cup. So yes, I think that this has proven the answer that we found. So let's go back and look at that question one more time. So how many 3/4 cup servings are in 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? Well, when we poured 2/3 cup of yogurt into 3/4 cup, we didn't even get quite a full 3/4 cup serving. So not even one serving, but rather about an 8/9 cup serving. So when we tested it in real life, we found about the same answer, actually exactly the same answer as what we got when we followed the mathematical steps. Okay. That would have been fun to do with something like hot cocoa or something like that. But anyway, I hope that sort of helped us wrap our heads around this. And now we are going to return to our practice problems. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of time to work independently on these 3 fraction division problems. If you have any questions as you're working on these, you can send them to me in the chat once again, and I will type back to you, or I'll answer out loud if I feel like it's something that perhaps I should clarify for everybody. When you finish solving these problems, I would like you to think, can you simplify your fraction answer, or can you write it as a mixed number? So that's an extra step that you can do for each of these problems. And then we're going to talk about these in a few minutes once it seems like everyone is ready to share. Remember to hang in there, as our sloth would tell us. And I'm looking forward to hearing how you all do with these problems.